welcome back to the show. We are joined today by Don't Fold Press, who is they're currently running a new Kickstarter on, and so we are going to be chatting and seeing about the project and about them. So let me stop talking myself and let's find out about why we're. Let's find out and learn about why we're here. Hi, how's it going?
Um, hi. It's going well. It's good.
So, before we start talking about the project, tell me a little bit about yourself, both as a reader and a creator.
So I'm PJ Fairweather. I'm a comics artist from Dundee, Scotland. Um, it is so I recently graduated from Duncan of Jordanson, the local art school's comics masters program. So I'm technically a comics masters. That doesn't feel right. Um, if you know my work, you probably know me from my contribution to Sensory Life on the Spectrum and potentially Bump a horror anthology. I also do, other odds and ends, but
Hmm.
those are what those are the headlines. Um, yeah, I I'm bad at talking about myself. Anyway, point is, yeah. So I do comics. I try and like sort of lean into sort of soft horror, and a lot of like reliance on folklore. I have a giant jackalope from one of my comics there, but and yeah, sort of. I've always loved comics. They were sort of like my summer marriage, my first love. Um, my introduction was like I used to live in this like kind of far out place in Scotland, and a library used to be on wheel. They used to send out like this van that was a library on wheels for like the local kids. And my first comic was this like reprinted collection of the Sam and Jack or Stan and Jack Fantastic Four comics. So my introduction was basically like the perfect comics introduction. Um, and since I've become, more invested in sort of you know, less superhero stuff and more
Yeah,
independent work. And obviously, I'm from Scotland. I'm Scottish. The voice will fool you, but
I was going to
I have a
say I was.
really um, I have a really strong affinity for the local comic scene. Like not
Mhm.
just um, where I live, but like Scotland has such a plethora of amazing comic artists, and a lot of them haven't quite broken into the mainstream.
So, kind of following that thread, tell us about the local scene over there because I'm more familiar with the indie creators over here in the States. What is the indie scene over in Scotland like?
Um, I love the local indie scene to death. A lot of the people who are on my book, which we'll get into, is that they're from this local scene. The comics, I think, what I find fresh about them is they kind of lean away from a lot of like tropey stuff. Like it's not quite, there are people doing superhero work, really great superhero work. Recommend Kid Eastwood, great superhero comic from Scotland. But there's a lot of people who are doing some more niche stuff, like uh, uh, you might have heard of Quindry Press, who put out a lot of really phenomenal work. And um, from that, like a huge plethora of people have been from Donefold or from Quindry and doing their own stuff within the scene. I've got Thomas Heatler, who did What the Witch Saw for Quindry Press on Something Alien, which again we'll get into. Um, the local scene's really great. It's quite small, and we often joke that it's about 20 quid that we hand out, and everyone gets a turn with the 20 quid, and then we hand it on to the next person at the convention. But every year that 20 quid gets another like, oh, now it's £20 50, it's steadily growing, and the
It
people within
adjusts
it
for
are very
inflation.
kind. Yeah. Mhm. It was Brexit. It took a hit. Whatever. Now it's back. No, um, but yeah, no. The local scene really great. And I live in Dundee, which if anyone knows, they know from uh the one episode of Succession. Um, I'm I'm about 5 minutes from where they filmed that. Um, but a lot of stuff is more based in Edinburgh and Glasgow and sort of that area over there.
Mhm.
Part of what I'm doing now is trying to. Dundee used to have a really strong indie comic scene, and I'm trying to sort of like make moves to build that back up again.
Cool. So let's talk about your Kickstarter for your label Don't Fold Press.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I mean, give us an overview of the project, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so Don't Press. I'm trying to remember what I wrote is like my bylines. Don't Press is my new comics sort of small press that I'm trying to launch. It's sort of focused on comics that are capital C comics. I sent you the press release. I'll try and
Mhm.
reiterate some of what I said when I had the time to think about it. Um, I want comics that lean into the medium, that love comics, like that have this feeling of uh, they're meant to be comics. The number one thing is like I want people to make comics that justify the medium. I don't want a comic that reads like it's going to be a screenplay, for example.
Right.
Um, and that doesn't mean I write off adaptations as something that we'd be interested in, but it's more so, justify the medium. That's the mission goal.
Mhm.
And our first project is the Something Alien Anthology. I've got together a group of really phenomenal artists from Scotland and a few of further afield, and we're putting together this comic about little alien stories. Um, Really talented people, and they've brought me a bunch of different ideas when I asked them to pitch. Um, you know, all of these people who are on the project, there are folks that I've met for like the local scene or
Mhm.
other events, and asked personally, like, do you want to be part of this? And very graciously, I've not really had any of them say no, so which is great. Um, uh, and it also gave me the opportunity to scout some people who have not made comics before or not been
Mhm.
published in any way, um, and who are, can I swear? Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Fucking phenomenal. Like they're that fucking good. Um, I'm so excited about all of the talent I have on the project, and
Mhm.
I'm so glad that they can like sort of play into my obsession with aliens and the extraterrestrial. Um, it's such an exciting thing to do.
Now, for this anthology, are you you're writing, you're drawing also, or what?
Yeah.
Besides hiring, finding the talent to work with, what are you what are you yourself bringing to the table?
So I am working on a story with Joe Farah, who runs a comic anthology himself called Bump, that got nominated for an Eisner last year, for one of the short stories. I worked on him for a story in his anthology, and so I approached him and was like, "Can you write me a story to draw again?" Because I
Mhm.
quite liked working with him. And I wrote a story for Hesitant Doodle, Sid, who is a quite established sort of local person. They did a phenomenal comic about wrestling called Guts. Um, and so I wrote them the story about sort of it's about the music industry in the early 2000s, filtered through the lens of alien abductions, and these little green cat things called kidnapsters that come down on lime wires. Um, uh,
You're using words
the
I understand.
there, yeah, uh, it wasn't. I'm not going to pretend that that was my era. I was maybe 4 years old when all that was happening, but it's such a fun. moment to sort of play in that space.
Hmm.
And it's got a lot of interesting gears in there. Sid's drawn it just so beautifully and so cute and energetic. Um, just there's such a joy in that collaboration, and with Joe Farah as well. Um,
So, having the academic background, are you finding that there are difference between what you learned in school and actually what you're, you know, putting to the page for your own stuff?
um, you know, I think I feel that when you go to like art school, what you learn is really not what you're taught, but what you teach yourself.
Hmm.
Um, and that's the joy of it. I mean, it was a couple of years for me to fuck around and kind of cut my teeth. I benefit greatly from Scotland. I don't pay a tuition fee, so I can't just go to university and fuck around. Um, but I I found it a really great time to sort of hone my craft, and I had some really great teachers. Dr. Damon Hurd is phenomenal, and he really like was very good at guiding me into making my craft better. Um, I think you get quite a good perspective because you're kind of um, in a position where you have to like really understand how the the sausage gets made, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um, I really enjoyed my comics master's course. I did it on the back end of a 4-year illustration undergrad. The comics masters, we were the last year, which is really such a shame. But it produced a lot of really great talent, a lot who are on the project, and it's sad to see it go. But I do think it definitely set people up to be, masters of the craft.
Hmm.
Um, And I think it gives you a good eye for comics. Like you know what to look for once you've done that because you've done all the research and you know the market through the years, and also just kind of you're able to figure out what kind of work appeals to you and take inspiration from that.
Okay, that's interesting. Because as someone who can't draw and has never tried to write anything, I'm interested in the just the process of the creator and uh, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So, who are your inspirations, both writers and artistically?
My influences are wild. So, I really love the work of Mike Mignola.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, it's Mike Mignola. I'll rep
Yeah.
my tattoo. Um, uh, love his work. He's just got such an eye for direction and atmosphere, and um, oh, it's delicious. It's amazing. Um, and also Mike Mignola, like he's completely rated as an artist. Everyone loves him, but as a writer, he's also amazing. Like
Hmm.
he just knows how to write for the craft. I love the work of Brian Lee O'Malley, um,
Hmm.
Scott Pilgrim, Seconds. That kind of comes into my influence stylistically. And then I got like sort of, like a lot of other influences. I think my writing, I sort of have this weird hodgepodge of sort of small scale character studies like Joachim Trier and Gothic horror. Um, and then, I mean, for the Kidnapster one that I did for this anthology, basically all that thrown out the window. Um, and I was just kind of um, inspired by a lot of the stuff that, like, I don't know, like growing up, a lot of the stuff that I enjoyed and I liked was coming from before the time that I was because we had money to buy the things that were already pre-owned. Um,
Right.
so I got this affinity for a lot of like early Y2K culture. I'm 24, so I definitely got to like sort of taste that early internet era. Um, but I also kind of, I fell in love with like the nostalgia of it all and repping Crazy Taxi. um, but like, yeah, like that sort of like very condensed Dreamcast and Napster and early internet era was kind of my guiding star on that. And the way that I wrote it was very much just like it was very riffing, and I was just coming up with like things that I thought was kind of funny. I don't know where I got my humor from. I'm sure it's probably something stupid. Um, Again, early internet, I probably was more influenced by like Newgrounds humor, and then I've matured and find a lot of that distasteful. But I think sort of non sequitur, haha, kind of stuff is fun.
So, is this your first experience with Kickstarter, uh, like running one, or sounds like you've been maybe been a part of one before?
Yeah, so I was part of, I think, two so far. Um, there was, trying to think if it's on my desk somewhere. I was part of Sensory, Life on the Spectrum.
Hmm.
This is the Kickstarter copy, but it also, once it hit its Kickstarter goal and was published through Kickstarter, it got picked up by Andrews McMeel.
Hmm.
Um, and I was part of Bump, a horror anthology. So, and I can rely on the people who made both of those to kind of, I ask Bex, the person who created Sensory, questions. I ask Joe Farah about stuff, um, and sort of other people on the Kickstarter have also run successful Kickstarter. So I kind of have a couple of people who are guiding stars. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here.
We all are, I think,
Yeah.
in our own ways. So, what different rewards are you offering? Those people who might want to support the campaign.
So, our reward tiers are, we got the general ones like the comic digitally, the comic physically. I've got a deluxe sets of tiers. So the digital deluxe comes with a few um, digital comics that are kind of this might be your only chance to get them. It's one of them is by Shay, Commander Cadaver Keys. They did a zine a while back, and this is going to be the last place you're going to be able to get that because it's out of print and it's not going to be available digitally. I've got Frank O'Neill did a really phenomenal comic, and it's the comic that made him like someone I wanted on the Kickstarter called Keloid. Um, Sort of a werewolf tale that's quite strange and metaphorical. I've got The Wall by Thomas Hitler. He's another one on the project, and that's sort of like a quite a strange, sort of like the Linclair style mixed with sort of Celtic mythology. Um, Really great work. And of course, I've also got Carrot Can't Sleep, which is where the jackalope is from. Uh, that was my thesis project for my comics masters, and something I hope to develop a bit more as I go. It's kind of in a weird liminal state where it, it's tied up in a few other things, but it is sort of the project I'm probably going to move on to after this is done. So if you want to
Yeah.
sort of get that first part, this is probably your easiest and cheapest way to do it. Um, our physical deluxe tier has all that, a physical copy and a sticker pack. Um, and our other tiers are you can get a commission from me. And there's going to be one that's like, well, there is one that's sort of just a wholesale, like 5 copies of the comic, you know.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think if I missed any. I am hoping to add a few more when we get to sort of the midsection, but I'm just kind of drafting up some contracts now, so I don't want to
Sure.
say anything yet. but there's looking to be a few more very short-term exclusive tiers as we go.
So uh, I know you've talked about some of the advice you've gotten from your mentors, but have you received other feedback on your work that you found helpful or has really helped you grow as a creator?
Um, like the thing that I find the most is, and I found this very much in art school, you surround yourselves with these like creatives, and you kind of end up feeding off of them and learning from them. Um, and like Cadaver Keys, Shay Commander, who's on this project, is also in real life like my best friend. So they have kind of also been a tutor to me. Like I don't have a very good understanding of color theory, but anything that I do well is because they do.
Hmm.
Um, and my friends are really great. Sounding boards. I had I've also had like loads of help throughout my career. Career's a weird way to say it. But my life, like because the Scottish indie scene is so small, I've interacted with some of the other people there. Uh, I format all my scripts in the way that Dave Cook, the writer of Kiltopia, does, because he sent me a script when I was younger to like sort of analyze and look through. Um, and I keep on saying, I
It's
get a
okay.
lot of
We all do.
I get a lot of responses from the work as it is, when I hand it out to people, when people get to read it. The best times are when I sell a comic at a con and then someone DMs me and is like, "Love it." I'm like, "Yes," you know. Um, and of course, a lot of the work that I've done for comics and that are comics have kind of gone through academic marking processes where I get feedback on them. Um, but I think, it's silly to say, but the biggest, it's dedication, it's consistent work. That's what keeps you active and working and getting better. It's just you stick at it.
Now, is there any, with your publishing label as Don't Fold Press, is there some backstory as to that, or was it just kind of a cool name that you came up with? Because I think it's really cool. Because when you think comics, you think Don't Fold.
I'm glad you kind of got the picture. So the name, it came from me and my friends. We formed a collective, like an arts collective called
Mhm.
Catgut Collective. And we run a magazine. Do I have any copies on my table? I do. We run a magazine like locally. That's the first issue. It doesn't look nearly as good as the other ones. Called The Bleeds. And when we were sort of putting together The Bleeds, we were like, okay, well, we need the name, and we started coming up with names. And I threw in Don't Fold Press as kind of one of the names for the collective. Um, and then we ended up going with Kaga because it just kind of fit the vibe that we were going for with that better. But the name was rattling around on my mind, and I already knew I wanted to do some like sort of Kickstarter comic stuff.
Mhm.
Sort of try and get some comics out there and work with some of the people I worked with on my comics masters and sort of try and get them, some work. Um, and so when I was doing that, I kind of came up with like, okay, well, Don't Fold Press was pretty good. I like that, and I like that for comics. I have to stop saying, Jesus. Um, and I approached a
Trust
really
me,
great
don't worry
graphic
about it.
designer.
I do it all the time, and when my wife listens, she goes, "It drives me mad."
I approached a really great graphic designer called Lewis Elks. He designed our logo and the logo for the Something Alien Anthology. Just really talented guy. I've worked with him quite a bit. Um, and uh, then it was just sort of we had the brand, and that gave me a direction for all of like the press release stuff and the social media stuff I've been making. Um, and Don't Full Press just kind of it made sense to me because part of what I really love about comics is like the object of comics. I mean, if you
Hmm.
pan slightly over my massive to read pile, which is only one of many to read piles scattered around my bedroom, I love comics. I love owning comics. I love having comics. And so the don't fold aspect, it does incentivize the thing. That said, um, you know, any backers who are interested on sort of the side of on the other side of the pond, the digital tiers are specifically designed to be, worth your while. The comics are great regardless if they're in print, and the digital deluxe tier is a good sort of way to get a sort of wider breadth of sort of the Scottish, very, very up and coming scene.
So, I mean, is there anything else that maybe I didn't ask you about the project, about, your journey, or uh, just anything about, you know, your experiences that you wanted to make sure that people knew about?
Um, yeah, I'll speak a bit to like the team, right?
Hmm.
I really love all of the people I get to work with on this. I'm in this really beautiful, unique position where I get to collect pages, and people can send me the work, and I can see it. And if anyone looks on the Kickstarter, I mean, they're going to be immediately blown away by like a lot of that work. Um, the one of the first people I approached with this idea was Shay, Commander,
Hmm.
and was kind of like, "Would you be interested in doing this?" And they were very gracious and were like, "Yep, absolutely." Um, I think genuinely the second person I then approached was Ella Wright, who's doing this really phenomenal story called The Intergalian, sort of like a sort of spirited away tale about
Hmm.
like an alien, um, you know, in it's really phenomenal. Ella draws their work and inks like it's calligraphy. Like they've got such a loose, beautiful style. I'm getting to work with someone who's just been so kind to me, Heston Doodle Sid. They're drawing the story I wrote. Um, I've been a fan of their work since I was in high school, and it's really crazy to now be kind of chatting to them as like equal level creatives, and I'm like, whoa, okay, no, you're better than me. uh, I really adore their work, and I really enjoy what they've done so far. Um, and then I'm working with so many people. Niall Ferguson, really great artist, really great person. They're from the Netherlands. Well, they're from Scotland, but they live in the Netherlands. Um, they're doing me this video game called The Outer Wilds, and their comic very much reminds me of that. It's this very how would I describe it? Folksy story
Hmm.
about an alien poet. Um, Frank O'Neill, phenomenal artist. He's doing me this one about Mackie, a little alien snailian, who's trying to find a gift for their partner, their girlfriend, and she goes to all of these different places on Earth and is trying to find like, oh, I'm in France. I need to find them something to bring back. Um, it's such a cute story. I'm really excited for that one.
Hmm.
Um, and they introduced me to Libby Dreyer Douglas, who is so crazy good at comics. Like, um, regardless of any impact I have, they're gonna like swim.
Hmm.
They're gonna be there. I've really loved the comics that they did before. That are kind of they're not going to be able to get your hands on them, but I'm really glad that I can be the first person to kind of introduce them. I'm really glad I get to be the first person to introduce Ella, though Power and Magic Press is got Ella and Shay Commander on their How to Touch Grass anthology, which is coming to Kickstarter soon. That I will shout out because I want both of those guys to succeed, and they will, and they will. They are
Hmm.
so talented. Um, and then Thomas Hitler has been so gracious to give me a comic that is sort of this Rosemary's Baby, but in space. It's the darkest in the anthology. It's strange, it's macabre, it's fucked up. I love it. It's got something I think is really important to say
Hmm.
about sort of mankind's aspiration for the stars and sort of um, control of human bodies. It's so interesting. There's so much subtext there to play with. Um, Obviously, Joe Healer and I are working together on a comic called Tranquility about a girl who collects this object from a alien spaceship. This one's very tonally like X-Files. It's quite dark. It's it's where I'm bringing in some of my Magnolia influences because it's got like those like boom hard blacks.
Hmm.
Um, Not to say I am anywhere near as talented. Um, so
It
yep,
sounds like
and
you were calling him out for an artist off.
you know what? I would do that just to meet him. I'd get my ass handed to me, but love his work. Uh, and then um, Ellie Hodgson is doing me this really beautiful. It's sort of tonally a Star Trek story. It's I'm trying to find some. Okay, we'll use this. Most of the comic, you know, that way.
Hmm.
Ellie's comic is going to be our this way, and the
Oh,
comic's
okay.
going to read down. I realize now, actually, the top of my pile on to read is an alien book that's on brand. um, so Ellie's fitting this like really interesting like structural format thing, and it's like I said, this sort of Star Trek in tone story about a an alien bug that is sort of separating themselves from their hive mind for the first time and trying to figure out what it is to be alive outside of that. It's a really interesting perspective and something that I'm so astonished that Ellie's kind of fought this thing
Mhm.
up. Um, I I know that I haven't said everyone's work yet. Millie Strachan is working on this autobiography comic. It's very interesting if you're a fan of sort of like the comics with an X kind of
Mhm.
era of underground comics. Their style is very that.
Mhm.
Um, I really love their work. It's got a richness to it that I really appreciate. Um, Gosh, who else is my guys? I said Shay, I said Libby, I mentioned Lewis, who's our graphic designer. He's phenomenal. Um, I think I actually have just gone through everyone. Um, and of course myself.
Mhm.
I'm drawing, I'm writing, I'm having a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of sort of things that I'm not talking about, but lots of little surprises
Sure.
within the comic that I want people to go into it as blind as possible while still
Mhm.
feeling like they know what they're getting. It's a difficult balancing act when trying to sell a Kickstarter, but I think that if you back us, not only will I be eternally grateful, I think you're going to get something that's going to be really special. I'm really proud of the work, and I'm insanely excited to see this thing finished. And we can only do that if with your help. Uh, the Kickstarter's pretty healthy right now. I'm really happy with where it is. But the most difficult time for a Kickstarter is that interim bit that we are currently in, and that kind of defines what the end is going to look like. You get most of your money at the start, you get most of your money at the end, but if people don't see that interim looking good, people don't back at the end. So, to a prospective watcher who is considering taking the dip and backing us, um, it would mean the world and the stars and the other worlds inside them. Trying to make an alien joke, not working. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a chance on, you know, this little Scottish project we've got going.
So one last question: as both a writer and an artist, is there one that you favor more, enjoy more, find more challenging? Is there a
I,
balance that you have to?
but before now, this is the first time I've written script for someone else to draw. And I've worked from scripts before, but most of my work has just been I have um, I have written it for myself and then I've drawn it.
Mhm,
I kind of see myself as less of a writer or an artist, but more I'm a cartoonist.
mhm,
Um, for me, comics are this craft that is this poetry of visuals and language, and it has its own unique way of working visually. Comics is the greatest medium in the world because it is the most involved in the world. Like when someone reads something, they are putting these pieces together in their mind in this beautiful way that kind of means that, when I create a story, when I create a comic, I'm not just doing that. You are doing that. You, the reader, are filling in the gaps and making it move. And I'm trying to guide you. I'm doing my best to guide you. I'm directing you. I'm letting you know where we are in space and whatnot. But it's a collaborative medium in the sense that it's me and it's the reader, and I love that and I adore that, and it's beautiful. Um, so I think I see myself as a cartoonist because I think that I enjoy the fact that then I get to be I know the visual language and I know sort of the language that makes comics good. It's one of the reasons I love Mike Mignola. He writes his own stuff. He knows how to like sort
mhm,
of guide these things. And that's not to say I don't like working with artists. I mean, or with writers. They are phenomenal. Like Joe Farr is phenomenal at understanding like a story that will be good for an artist to draw, and also um, really receptive when I'm like, well, I want to try and maybe build this page differently from the way you imagined. Um, and the collaboration itself is really fun. I love collaboration.
yeah, no,
Um, but yeah, I think do I see myself as a writer? Do I see myself as an artist? I'm definitely more of an artist than I am a writer, but I see myself as a cartoonist.
okay. And where, besides the Kickstarter, which we will feature along with this interview over on our weekly crowdfunder roundup on Comic Watch, where can people find out more about you and see some of your work?
So you can find me on the web as PJalien, PEEJ, and then Alien. Um, you can find my art online under that name. My comics, right now, if you want to buy them, you have to get them through this Kickstarter or find me at a con. I'll be doing the Glasgow Small Press Day at Forbidden Planet. I'll be at Sequential Scotland. But if you are in the States, I don't know, DM me. I'll send you something. Um, we'll figure it out. But the
I
Kickstarter is
expect to
great.
see you at New York Comic Con.
Oh God. Um, it depends on if
and,
Mandela
and
goes in. If Zoran wins the mayoral election, I'll come to Comic Con.
yeah,
uh, I am, yeah, so I'm PJ Lane on across the web. I'm part of Catgut Collective on Instagram. It's the Catgut Collective, or it's maybe just Catgut Collective. If you Google us, you'll find us. We run
okay.
a bi-monthly magazine called The Bleeds, where I get to talk about all the things that are too long to be in a tweet, um, or a blue sky, or whatever we call a blue sky tweet these days.
Hmm.
Um, I write essays about I wrote about Jet Set Radio. I write about the X Files. It's a fun little project, and a lot of really great artists work on that. And of course, search Don't Fold Web for me across the web, or Don't Fold Press across the web. We are looking to. We've already got some other things in the pipeline, and the success of this is partially based on support from everyone else. And I think it's an interesting time for the industry. There's a lot of very strange stuff happening in the industry. Um, a lot of stuff happening, obviously, stateside with Diamond's whole situation. But in the UK, it is also a very promising time for the industry. Like I said, Scotland's got this really beautiful, healthy indie scene, and I'd love to be a part of it. And I'd love if you guys, no matter where you are, were interested in, uh, you know, uh, giving our little chunk of this island a chance to really thrive. Um, Again, I'm in the most irrelevant part of Scotland. It's again. There's a Succession episode. That's all we got. I see Brian Cox around sometimes. He's um taller than you'd think. Um, but yeah, I'm really proud of the work we did and the work we're doing.
Mhm.
And um, I honestly, truly, genuinely believe that I am working with some of the greatest comic artists in the world right now. And the only difference between them and the heavy hitters, the A-listers, is that they haven't, they haven't had the time. Um,
Mhm.
every overnight success happens over the course of at least 10 years. Get it on the ground floor. See these people before they are astronomical successes. You guys can be like the first fuckers to own a copy of Blankets. You can get on the ground floor here, and I would really be grateful if you did.
Yeah. Well, best of luck as the Kickstarter, kind of hits its stride, and like I said, we'll continue to follow it. And whenever you have your next project, let's set something up again, and we can chat about how this one went, lessons
Hmm.
learned, and what you're working on next.
It sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. Have a great day. And I see we're both I'm representing Classic Mario today. So,
Okay, we've got a Sega versus Nintendo moment.
so all right. Well, have a great day, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much.